There is a question most people will never ask themselves. Not because it is too difficult, but because the answer is too uncomfortable. The question is this: how much of your life, your choices, your words, your silence, your ambitions, your fears, how much of it belongs to you, and how much of it belongs to the opinion of someone else? Think about the last time you held back what you truly felt. The last time you wore a mask to fit in. The last time you said yes when everything inside you screamed no. That was not weakness. That was something far more subtle and far more dangerous. That was the invisible cage. And today, on this channel, in this moment, we are going to break it open. My name is not important. What matters is this: by the time this video ends, you will understand something about yourself that most people go their entire lives without realizing. And once you understand it, you cannot unsee it. Welcome to Warrior Philosophy. We live in an era of extraordinary noise. Every day, billions of people wake up and immediately begin measuring themselves against the highlight reels of strangers, against the expectations of parents, colleagues, and culture, against a standard no one ever clearly defined, and yet somehow everyone feels they are failing to meet. We post photographs not to remember moments but to collect proof that we matter. We voice opinions not because we have thought deeply, but because we need to be on the right side. We pursue success not because we are drawn to it, but because we are terrified of what people will think if we don't. This is the approval trap. And it is not new. It is ancient. It is wired into the architecture of human psychology. For hundreds of thousands of years, social rejection was not merely embarrassing. It was lethal. To be cast out from the tribe meant exposure to predators, to starvation, to death. So the human brain evolved a survival mechanism: scan constantly for the approval of the group. Adjust behavior accordingly. Never stray too far from what others find acceptable. That mechanism saved lives once. But the wilderness it was designed for no longer exists. What remains is the mechanism itself, still running, still consuming enormous amounts of your energy, still steering your decisions, not towards what is true or meaningful or worthy of your soul, but towards what will generate the least amount of disapproval. And here is the cruel irony. The more desperately you seek the approval of others, the less they actually respect you. People sense inauthenticity the way animals sense fear. The man who shifts his opinions with every new audience, who laughs at every joke to avoid tension, who molds himself to whatever shape seems safest, that man does not earn love. He earns polite contempt. You cannot be respected for being whatever someone else needs you to be. You can only be respected for being precisely and unapologetically what you are. 20 centuries ago, in an empire built on power, spectacle, and the crushing weight of public opinion, a group of thinkers arrived at a radical conclusion. They were the Stoics. And their philosophy was not born in comfortable lecture halls. It was forged in real suffering. In exile. In slavery. In the cold, impossible loneliness of ultimate power. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome. Commander of the greatest army the ancient world had ever seen. A man whose single word could end or begin lives. And yet, in the private pages of his journal, never intended for any eye but his own, he returned again and again to a single obsession. How do I stop caring what people think of me? He wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me, we all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." Read that again. Let it land. We love ourselves more than we love others, and yet we surrender the governance of our own lives to their judgment. Marcus understood something most people never grasp. The opinion of another person is their internal event. It happens inside them. It belongs to them. It is not yours to carry. Epictetus understood this even more fiercely. And Epictetus had every reason to understand it. He was born a slave. He had no freedom of movement, no political power, no social standing. He owned almost nothing. And yet Epictetus was one of the freest men who ever lived. Because he had mastered the single division that changes everything. Some things are within our control. And some things are not. What is within your control? Your judgments. Your intentions. Your values. Your responses. What is not within your control? The opinions of other people. Their approval. Their love. Their respect. You cannot guarantee any of it. You cannot earn it reliably. You cannot hold on to it permanently. And chasing it is not strength. It is slavery dressed in ambition's clothing. Epictetus said, "Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life." This is not resignation. This is precision. It is the art of knowing where to spend the currency of your will, and where not to waste it. And then there is Seneca, the greatest prose stylist of the ancient world, advisor to emperors, a man of wealth and vast influence, who wrote in a letter to his friend Lucilius, "As long as you are not able to be indifferent to applause, you have not yet achieved true freedom." Applause. Applause is just the loudest form of approval. And Seneca, who had lived inside the machinery of Roman power, who had watched men destroy themselves chasing the emperor's favor, he knew the truth with surgical clarity. Freedom does not begin when others finally approve of you. Freedom begins when you no longer need them to. But why is this so difficult? If the approval trap is so obviously damaging, why do brilliant, capable, grown adults still fall into it, every single day? The answer lives in your earliest years. When you were young, you had no power, no resources, no ability to survive alone. You were entirely dependent on the adults around you. And those adults communicated approval and disapproval as the primary language of love. Do this and we smile. Do that and we frown. Perform well and you are held. Fail or disobey, and the warmth withdraws. As a child, you learned an equation. Approval equals safety. Disapproval equals danger. That equation was etched into your nervous system before you had language to question it, before you had philosophy to challenge it, before you had the wisdom to realize that the people teaching it were themselves trapped by it. And so you carried it forward. Into school where belonging required fitting in. Into workplaces where success required pleasing authority. Into relationships where love seemed conditional on performance. You became fluent in reading rooms, detecting moods, adjusting behavior, softening edges, hiding inconvenient truths, not out of cruelty but out of survival instinct. But here is what that early equation never told you. The adult who sacrifices his authenticity for approval does not feel safe. He feels hollow. Because deep inside, beneath the masks, beneath the performance, beneath the perfectly calibrated version of yourself you project for public consumption, there is a voice that knows. It knows when you are lying about what you believe. It knows when you are shrinking to make someone else comfortable. It knows when you chose the safe answer instead of the true one. And that voice, quiet as it is, never stops speaking. The anxiety you feel. The persistent low-level dissatisfaction. The sense that something important is missing even when your external life appears successful. This is not weakness. This is not a mental health condition. This is integrity demanding to be heard. It is the self, your actual self, knocking on the door you've been too afraid to open. So how do we begin? Not with grand gestures. Not with dramatic declarations of independence. The Stoics were not interested in performance. They were interested in practice. Here are the disciplines of the free mind. The first rule: separate your self-worth from external outcomes. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire and was loved and hated in equal measure. He did not govern to be loved. He governed because it was his duty, his role, and his virtue. The reception, positive or negative, was never the measure of whether he had acted well. Practice this. Before you act, before you speak, before you post, before you decide, ask yourself one question only: is this aligned with my values? Not, will people approve? Not, will I look good? Only, is this who I have chosen to be? That is your standard. That is the only standard worth having. The second rule: greet disapproval without flinching. The Stoics recommended a practice called negative visualization, the deliberate imagining of the thing you fear so that when it arrives, it has less power over you. Imagine, right now, someone you respect hearing your honest opinion and disagreeing sharply. Imagine someone laughing at your ambition. Imagine criticism arriving publicly without mercy. And then ask, would I survive this? You would. You always do. The fear of disapproval is always larger than the disapproval itself. The anticipation of rejection is always more painful than the rejection. When you stop protecting yourself from discomfort, when you walk willingly into the territory you have been avoiding, you discover that the monster guarding the door was made of shadow. The third rule: choose your audience carefully, and then shrink it. Epictetus understood that you cannot be accountable to everyone. To attempt it is to be accountable to no one, because every person pulls you in a different direction, and what remains when you try to please them all is not a life. It is a compromise. A blur. A careful nothing. Instead, identify a handful of people whose judgment genuinely matters to you, people who know you, who have earned the right to offer counsel, whose own lives reflect values you admire. When those people offer criticism, receive it. Sit with it. Let it teach you. As for everyone else, the crowd, the algorithms, the strangers with strong opinions, practice indifference. Not hostility. Not arrogance. Simply indifference. As you would be indifferent to weather. It changes. It is not yours to control. The fourth rule: live in the present record, not the public one. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations in private. They were not published in his lifetime. He was not writing for admiration. He was writing to hold himself accountable, to himself, to his own philosophy, to the man he wanted to be when no one was watching. Ask yourself, if no one could see this, if there were no audience, no applause, no recognition, would I still do it? If the answer is yes, you are doing something real. If the answer is no, you are not living. You are performing. And performance, no matter how skilled, no matter how well received, leaves nothing at the end. It is sound and light. It fades when the audience leaves. What remains is only what you actually built in the silence when it was just you and your choices and the truth. There is an old Stoic idea that does not get discussed enough. It is this: every person you have ever sought approval from will one day be gone. The crowd that judges you today will disperse. The voices that haunt you, the critical parent, the dismissive colleague, the strangers whose opinion you've carried for years without even knowing their names, they are temporary. They are passing. And so are you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly." This is not morbid. This is clarifying. When you hold your mortality in plain view, when you feel, genuinely, the weight of the time you have, the question of what other people think of you loses most of its power. Because suddenly you are not asking, what will they think? You are asking, what kind of man am I becoming? And that question, quiet, private, demanding, that is the only question worth building a life around. The Stoics were not cold men. They were not emotionless or indifferent to human connection. They loved deeply. They grieved. They felt the full force of being alive. But they refused, absolutely refused, to mortgage their inner life for the fleeting currency of approval. They chose freedom instead. Not the freedom to do whatever they pleased, but the deeper, harder, rarer freedom. The freedom to be exactly who they were regardless of what the world made of it. That freedom is available to you right now. Not after you become more successful. Not after you resolve your past. Not after the people who hurt you finally understand you. Right now. In this moment. With this breath. You do not need permission to be yourself. You never did. If this reached something in you, if it stirred something you already knew but hadn't yet let yourself fully hear, then you are exactly where you are supposed to be. This channel exists for those who are willing to ask the hard questions. For those who are willing to sit with the discomfort that real philosophy demands. For those who are done performing their life and ready to begin living it. Subscribe to Warrior Philosophy. Not for content. For the practice. For the discipline. For the slow, relentless work of becoming someone whose life is their own. New lessons in Stoicism, human psychology, and self-mastery, every week. The Stoics are waiting.